Hello everyone, my name is Juliana. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. I just want to give a shout out to my mom for choosing the name that she chose for me. Juliana. Like, that's one of the most beautiful names ever in history. You know, easy to say, easy to remember. My mom did her thing when she chose my name. And let me tell you a pet peeve of mine. People that spell my name with two N's. At work, I will send out an email to my colleagues, or sometimes it's a third party. My name is signed at the end of the email. It shows you how I spell my name. Yet, you respond to me with, "Hello, Juliana," with two N's, while I'm Juliana with one N. Disrespectful. Disrespectful. Anyways, today I would like to talk to you guys about a cold case from Brampton, Ontario. And I don't know, should I classify this as a cold case? Technically, they knew who the perpetrator was and they knew where he was. They knew what country he was in, but they didn't know in what city, kind of thing. Now, I don't know how they caught him. I don't know if someone called in a tip or someone recognized him and called in a tip. Well, that's the same thing they just said. Or maybe, I don't know. But I don't know how he turned himself. No, he wouldn't have turned himself. Okay, I don't know how the police found him. But they did after 14 years. And now he's standing trial in a Brampton courtroom. He's testified. He's admitted to what he did. But he's saying it was an accident. And I guess what they're trying to go for is to get, because he was charged with second degree. So I think what he's going for is manslaughter, which is lesser charge, lesser time in jail. But, we'll see what happens. And he was even on America's Most Wanted back in 2009. The case was showcased there. I can't find the clip of it, but I'm pretty sure I remember seeing this case on there because I was an avid watcher of America's Most Wanted back in the day, with John Walsh. But, let's get into the case. Let's get into it. 31-year-old Morales Morales is described as a mother, a friend, a daughter, sister, someone who was loved by everyone. Everyone she comes into contact with, they loved her. They developed a relationship with her. She had a kindness that radiated. One of those type of people, always positive, So on July 13th, 2006, the married mother of two young boys was found unalive in her 12th floor apartment at Steeles Avenue West at Montmorency Avenue in Brampton, Ontario. Marlena and her husband, Henry Morales, were high school sweethearts. They eventually got married at Toronto City Hall and went on to have two sons, Henry Jr., who was 10, and Joshua, who was 7. The couple's relationship became abusive, and Marlena tried to escape, even going as far as returning to her native country of Ecuador. This was in February of 2006. She took her young boys with her. But even with miles between them, Marlena couldn't escape. She had gone to Ecuador with plans to move there permanently. Shortly after her arrival, Henry followed suit. Her brother Freddie recalls an incident when he received an urgent call from his sister. They were staying at his house while they were in Ecuador. And, he got the call and he rushed back home, and Marlena was outside with a red mark on her neck. She told her brother, Henry, her husband, had tried to strangle her. When he spoke to Henry, he denied the allegations and said he only shoved her. Henry was asked to leave, which he did, but it took, 3 long days. And he ended up returning to Canada, Brampton, Ontario. Before doing so, he kneeled in front of Marlena asking for her forgiveness. You know how those types do. They commit their crime against you and then they beg. They make you start to feel sorry for them for something that they did to hurt you. It's messed up. But anyways, yeah, he asked for her forgiveness, and then he would go on to tell her brother that he was in love with his sister and had intentions of luring her back, and he wouldn't hit her again. That's what they always say, but it does happen again, over and over and over. Freddie convinced Marlena to report the assault to police because of fears it would happen again. Her niece took pictures of the mark on her neck. From the police report, translated into English, Marlena told the Ecuadorian police that she had separated from her husband 6 weeks before he arrived. And she told him she wanted a divorce. That's when he threw her on the sofa, climbed on top of her, and tried to suffocate her. She stated that she was being abused psychologically and physically and couldn't take it anymore. Even though, her intentions were to stay in Ecuador, she would eventually return to Canada, because her mom was urging her to come back, and also because Henry was making threats to take the children away from her. I'm presuming the kids were born in Canada, so that means, Canadian. He could have went to family court here saying, look, my kids are Canadian born. I want them back here with me. And he could have potentially, gotten an order to enable his kids to come back here. So she was afraid that he would take her sons away from her. So, she came back. After she arrived back in Canada, she sent an email to her brother, which read, "You can imagine Henry is behaving like a saint, but I know that any moment a bomb is going to go off and I want to be prepared so he doesn't try to take my children." Other emails would follow. "Having gone to Ecuador was very good for me," she wrote, thanking her brother for all his support. "Though it had seemed that I had lost the battle for a while now, I realized that I gained strength and ground to win the war. My life is getting organized again. Now that I'm working, I have more strength and feel more self-confident. And apparently, there's a certain person who doesn't like that. Yesterday, I applied for the divorce, and on Monday, I will sign some papers. It takes 1 year from then to be finalized," she wrote. "Hopefully, I'll be back soon. Thanks for everything." 2 weeks later, on January 11th, 2006, she was unalived. That night, the couple's eldest son heard arguing coming from his parents' bedroom. This was the norm. They always argued. But after returning from Ecuador, their arguing escalated. And at some point, after she arrived back in Canada, Marlena did get her own apartment for her and her sons. But Henry's name was on the lease. So I don't know, maybe she didn't have enough credit history or work history or whatever and couldn't get the apartment in her name, so she had no other choice. And he was on the lease and he moved into that new apartment with them. And she did call police to see if they can escort him out, but because his name was on the lease, they couldn't force him to leave. And at the time, she wasn't reporting an ongoing incident that just happened. She just wanted him to leave. So, but that night, on January 11, 2006, Henry Jr. remembered hearing screaming from his parents' bedroom. This was the first time he heard his mother scream, "Junior, come help me. Junior, come help me." He was only 10 years old. He's paralyzed with fear. And while wanting to go help his mother, his father, who he trusted, also told him that everything was fine and not to come into the room. So he didn't. And I know he probably feels some guilt about that, but he shouldn't. You're only 10 years old. About an hour after, Henry Sr. would come out of the bedroom telling his sons everything was fine and their mother was tired and wanted to get some rest. He then took the boys out to play mini putt and dinner before coming back to the apartment. And the next day, which was July 12th, 2006, Henry Sr. spent the day, driving around Toronto, going to different banks. And he ended up buying his eldest son an early Christmas present. I think it was a Nintendo Wii system. And then after he dropped them off at his brother's house, so their aunt and uncle, and telling them, "I'm going to drop you off. I'm going to be away for a while. And don't talk about what happened last night. It's just between me and your mom." He kissed and hugged them. And that would be the last time they would see or talk to him. Because Henry Morales decided, you know what? I'm going on the run. I'm going to do the crime, but I'm not doing the time. And he jetted off. A few hours after he dropped the boys off, at about, I think it was 1 a.m, he called his brother. He called his brother telling him that he had done something stupid, something he regretted, and that the boys were his now. Marlena was in the apartment and she was in heaven now. His brother called the police and Marlena's body was discovered in the bedroom. She was lying in bed in her pajamas and the comforter was pulled up to her chest. Her body was cold to the touch. And, they did an autopsy which revealed that she died of manual strangulation and blunt force injuries. She also had 5 broken ribs. So they put a warrant out for her husband, and his car was found 4 days later at the airport, Toronto Pearson Airport. And in 2009, his case was broadcast on America's Most Wanted. But it wasn't until 2019 he was found in Mexico, and then it took another 10 months for him to be extradited. And on February 24th, 2020, he arrived back on Canadian soil to finally face justice for second-degree murder. And that's going on right now in a Brampton courthouse. Many of the couple's friends, family, former co-workers, some of them are even in France, like other countries, but they're testifying by Zoom to tell what happened, because Marlena was telling her family, like, this relationship is not working out. She was telling her friends and coworkers, I don't love him anymore. She was scared of him. And this is what ended up happening. And even Henry has already testified in court. He admitted to his crime and everything else after that. Yes, I unalived her. Yes, I lied to my family to be able to get out of the country. He's saying, I didn't mean to unalive her. We got into an argument and it escalated. And all I know is I'm on top of her, unaliving her. And then he said, like, when he came out of it, then he felt her pulse and she didn't have a pulse. And that's when he started to panic. And he took the boys to play mini putt and dinner because he wanted them to remember one last happy time with their father. Like, really, sir? Really? So I think he's trying to go for a manslaughter charge instead of second degree. It's crazy. Like, you unalived your wife, the mother of your children. You didn't care about the consequences. You didn't care about your sons. They were right there in the apartment. And then you went on the run and lived happily. Well, I don't know if he was happy, but he was living freely. And now you're saying, oh, yes, I did it, but I didn't mean to. I don't know. I think he's going to be found guilty. It's just a matter of what. It's just a matter of what. But I feel like he'll be convicted of second degree, and I hope he is. While it's too late for Marlena, I hope someone listening or watching this can learn from her story. The abuse starts and you don't even realize that it started. You start blaming yourself for things that he's done. And no matter, those who know. But if you're in a relationship and he starts verbally abusing you, or the very first time he hits you, that's the best time to go. That's the best time to go, especially if you don't have anything attached. The longer you stay, the deeper you're in. But I don't know. I'll keep my eyes out on this story. I want to see what the verdict's going to be. And I'll keep you guys updated. I'll post on the community tab. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. Like and share this video. I am trying to grow my channel in 2023. Okay? I have goals. I have goals inside that I want to, make them into reality. But anyways, like I said, share the video. If you're not yet subscribed, please do so. Like, share, and let me know what you think about this case. Are you following the case? Have you ever heard about it? Do you think he's going to be found guilty of manslaughter or second degree? Let me know in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.
After 14 years on the run, a man accused of killing his wife in Brampton has been arrested in Mexico.
Peel police working with Mexican authorities to bring the suspect to Canada. CTV's Austin Delaney's live outside the courthouse in Brampton with more. Austin.
This was a cold case that detectives would just not forget about. Then, suddenly, a call out of nowhere, a tip. And suddenly, 14 years after the crime, detectives had eyes on their main suspect. Shortly after getting off a plane from Mexico with a Peel police escort, Henry Morales was walked through Pearson International.
It's one of the cases that you get started with and you can't let it go.
Inspector Thomas Warfield was one of the original investigators and was like a dog with a bone, never giving up. A 14-year international manhunt for the man charged with the second-degree murder of his wife. Now investigators finally have their suspect in hand.
It sends a message to those that are out there that we're looking for you and we're not going to stop. You may think we're quiet and in the background, but behind the curtain, we're looking for you, and we're actively going to find you.
Morales' 31-year-old wife, Melina, beaten and strangled in their Brampton apartment. The suspect, her husband, was nowhere to be found.
From the investigation, we knew that he had fled the country and gone to Mexico. Those were records that we had already that were pertaining to his travels. It then goes cold.
Cold for 14 years until an unexpected tip came in with an address in Mexico, and police there went looking for the 44-year-old.
Investigators called me and told me that they have an eye on him.
10 months ago, Mexican police knocked on his door, arrested, then extradited back to Canada yesterday. Morales spent the last 10 months in a prison in Mexico fighting extradition. He spent last night in a jail cell at the airport, was remanded in custody, driven to the Maplehurst institution today, where he'll await trial. Reporting live in Brampton, I'm Austin.
It's a huge relief to know that they never gave up. And they actually looked for him and found him.
Lizette Franco is filled with emotion now that her former brother-in-law, who was on the run for nearly 14 years, is finally on trial.
One Peel police detective at the beginning of the investigation, he did say we always get our guy. And that is one thing that always stuck in my head.
It was July 2006 when Melina Morales was found strangled to death with 5 broken ribs in the Brampton apartment where she lived with her husband and their 2 sons. But Melina's husband, 30-year-old Henry Morales, had disappeared.
When did you find out he'd fled the country?
I think it was a few days after my sister's body was found. I think his car was found in the airport, and so that's how we knew that he had taken off.
Franco started a social media campaign in the hope someone would spot Morales.
To even think that he's somewhere out there in the world living his life, it's infuriating.
Finally, in February 2020, Morales was extradited back to Canada after being found in Mexico. Franco went to court Wednesday and saw her former brother-in-law for the first time since 2006.
It was very uncomfortable, to say the least, to see him after so long when, at one point in my life I thought that this day would never come.
She's proud of her nephew, Henry Morales Jr., who was just 10 years old when his mother was killed. On Tuesday, Morales Jr. told the jury he heard his mother scream for help, but believed his father when he told his son that everything was okay.
Just the strength that he has to have to, stand there and see his father after so long and have to testify what traumatic events he went through when he was a young child. It's my sister.
Melina's brother testified Thursday that Melina, who was visiting Ecuador in early 2006, filed a police report against her husband alleging assault. He also said Melina started divorce proceedings just weeks before she was killed.
She died in a very cruel, brutal, unfair way, and she deserves justice.
Henry Morales has pleaded not guilty.
And Lizette Franco says while the murder happened a long time ago, she says the pain is still very fresh. As for getting that call in 2020 when police found Henry Morales in Mexico after a 13-year manhunt, Franco says it happened on her birthday, what she calls the best birthday of her life.